Be professional, AP.
Yeah, try. Just try.
Hello, and welcome to A Critical Dragon, where I talk about narrative in film, television, and in books. And today I am joined by Stephen Erikson. Hello, Steve.
Hi, how are you?
I am doing very, very well. So, before we got started here, I was telling you a bit about Philip Chase doing a close reading of one of the poems, the epilogue, or sorry, the epigraph from The Bone Hunters.
Yeah, okay.
And
Let's pause right now. Pause right now. I was listening to you talking with you and Philip talking with Cam, and there was this one instance where you brought up when Cam and I were living in Victoria, I bought a box set, a D&D box set. And I was looking at Cam's face while you were describing the title of the box set, which apparently you'd heard from me. And I was going, no, AP is absolutely full of bullshit. And that's why Cam was just looking blank, because the box set was actually the introduction of the Forgotten Realms. It had nothing to do with the Drow. It had nothing to do with any of that. It was the Forgotten Realms. So I just wanted to sort of bring that up, because I don't know where you got that story about the Drow, I don't know, add-on, whatever.
the Malazan box
I
set.
mean, I'm baffled. I'm baffled. So,
Right, you do realize I'm just going to cut out all of this, and no
oh,
one
that's
will
just
ever know that I
typical.
was wrong.
That's just typical. Yeah.
Well,
And the
it's
other thing, the other curious thing that I don't think Cam and I don't think it's really been addressed, because when people ask us for influences, they tend to mean it in a literary published book, short story context. But I was thinking back, and our main influences were actually film and television. And that is why our first go-to was a film script of Gardens of the Moon. And not, I mean, in a sense, the novels were our last sort of default. It was our it was sort of reaching the end. Okay, what you're hearing here is the football game that's going on right now. My wife, being English, is glued to the television screen. But anyways, yeah, it was much more the film and television that when we were living in James Bay here in Victoria, and both students at UVic, um, played a major role in sort of shaping how we would sort of create the atmosphere, if you will, for the Malazans, first the Malazan games. And then we thought, well, maybe we can do a D&D version or a GURPS version, RPG style thing. And then we defaulted from there to scripts, because we'd already sold a feature film script. And so when I look back on it, I mean, I was taking film studies as well at the same time. So I was watching, I guess what would be considered the classic films, and whether it was Kurosawa or John Ford or Carol Reed's Third Man or Fallen Idol, all of these films were sort of, I was picking up the video cassettes of these films because they were super cheap, because they were sort of classics.
Mhm.
But two of the main influences, I had recorded the extended series of The Singing Detective, the one with Michael Gambon, and that's I mean, it's a brilliant series, and it has this wonderful meta element to it. It's meta narrative that blends in a very surreal fashion the fictional world from with what the character, the author, is going through in a hospital, on a hospital bed. But then we also watched uh, Lion in Winter, which is, absolutely extraordinary as a film. And the one that made me think about all this was you were talking about Alexander Dumas and the Three Musketeers. Well, we had been just watching the film adaptation of Three Musketeers, the one with Michael York and Oliver Reed and Charlton Heston and Raquel Welch, which to me is the finest adaptation I've ever seen of that story. And the scripts were written by at least the second one, anyways, by George MacDonald Fraser, the author of the Flashman series. Mm-hmm. And these things were having a huge effect. And I'm sure that it was as much the adaptation that we watched on our crappy black and white television of the Three Musketeers as it was the books. So just to clarify some things on that, because it was, I mean, film and television really had a huge, and if you think of the sort of cinematic aspects of our series, that's where that was born. It came out of what we were watching. I mean, Quick Ben is Ben Quick from the film Long Hot Summer, which is the Faulkner film. And I can't recall, the script may well have been written by Hemingway. And then Hemingway's film To Have and to Have Not, the script was written by Faulkner. But that film adaptation of the Long Hot Summer was the Paul Newman one. And these were, you know, we were watching all of these classics, and it had a huge effect, I think, on everything about the Malazan world. So that's one influence that actually we have never really talked about. So maybe the next time you get me and Cam together, you can ask us, because he may remember various other films that have not come to mind right now. But
yeah, it's strange because anytime we think about literature, we always focus on the literary influences, and yet we live in a multimedia, multi-narrative world. And I think that when I was growing up, film and television had a huge impact on how I understood narrative. And then I studied literature, but and then I also grew up in that time period of the evolution of computer games and ludic narratives, and that whole approach to narrative structure was I encountered it in the computer game variant, but that traces back to D&D and this mathematical framework for exploring and resolving conflict in a narrative. And it's just this giant sort of soup, this cauldron of narrative from all of these different ingredients. But to return to your point about the box set, I will tell you why I was confused about this. And again, I might edit this out, I might not. But we were discussing, it was when I was in Victoria, and we were discussing the D&D stuff, particularly Forgotten Realms and the Underdark. We were actually having a conversation about the Underdark when you had told me the story about getting the box set of Forgotten Realms. So in my head, now this is going back, what, 6-7 years?
At least, yeah. I have no memory of the Underdark. I'm not even aware of what that is. As soon as you bring it up, it's a blank for me. So
it's the Dark Elves from Forgotten Realms.
Okay.
The Dry from Forgotten Realms, and we were talking about Forgotten Realms, and we were talking about maps in Forgotten Realms. And that whole conversation about the Hyborian map, the original sort of one that Hard had sketched together, that geologically didn't make any sense.
No.
And then you told the story, you were telling me about getting the box set that you and Cam went through of D&D, but for some, we'd also been talking, or I had been talking about the Dry. Right. And the first box set I remember in Forgotten Realms was the Manazaraban Forgotten Realms box set. I didn't realize there was the previous Forgotten Realms setting, because when I encountered Forgotten Realms, it was Douglas Niles had written the Moonshade trilogy, and R.A. Salvatore had written the Icewind Dale trilogy. And those were the two settings. And then the next major launch was Manazaraban, the Dry Underdark.
Yeah, I think the box set was the introductory set, the first edition, the first mention of Forgotten Realms, even as a a phrase. And yeah, the map, I mean, it's full color map. And I remember it specifically because I bought it in a game store in Market Square in Victoria. And Cam and I used to walk into town, and there still is a Mexican restaurant that's part of the Market Square in town, where you could buy Tecate beer. And both Cam and I have been down through Mexico on different occasions. And that was our beer of choice, basically. And so I remember buying the box set, and we went over to eat lunch and drink some beer, and opening up the box set, and we unfolded the map and laid it out on the table. And I think we were silent for about 3 minutes because we were just so freaking appalled at how bad this map was. Beautifully made, beautifully rendered, but horrendously. I mean, yeah, geomorphologically just impossible, the entire map. And then anthropologically also impossible. You had cities on grasslands with no farms and no herds and nothing. You know, it drove us crazy. And that sort of inspired us at that point to think about, well, let's do a game world, a proper Malazan game world. But that, I think, fairly quickly, we realized how much work that was going to involve, how much rewriting and redrawing of maps. And then who do you contact? We don't know. And so it then moved fairly quickly to doing feature film stuff. And when we first talked about doing the script version for Gardens of the Moon, it very much was a combination of that Michael York version of The Three Musketeers and Raiders of the Lost Ark. That was kind of, we were mashing the two together for Gardens of the Moon. And that's the script we wrote at that time. So.
Well, that explains the comedy action of some of the sequences, that the almost slapstick nature of some of the things that happens, which when you consider when you novelized it, the tonal shift, mm-hmm. which personally I think you actually blend quite well, and it works as a nice juxtaposition against the more serious elements that you move between the two, rather than it being jarring.
Yeah.
But the overall tone of Gardens of the Moon is obviously quite more a lot more serious and darker than.
Yeah, as a consequence of rewrites, yes. Because the original script started with the battle on the rooftops, the assassins. It starts with Crocus and his thieving escapades and his stealing the stuff, and then fleeing across the rooftops while he finds himself in the middle of this assassin war. That's where the film starts. And so it was kind of nonstop from that point onwards. All the stuff that happens out on the Rivi Plain, all that stuff with Tattersail, all the stuff with Paran, none of that was in the script. In fact, the first time we see the Malazans at all is Whiskey Jack and Company on the street laying bricks. And that's our first introduction in the script, the film script version of the so-called enemy.
So in the script version, if it starts with Crocus and it's basically in Darujistan and it's about the Daru, and obviously the audience would be hearing about the Malazans coming, they'd be hearing about the fear of invasion. Did Rake was in it or not? Was that?
Yeah. Well, Rake visits when Moonspawn arrives, and Rake visits Baruch. I'm pretty sure that was in the script, because a lot of the fete scene at the end and the masks that were worn and all that stuff, that was also straight out of the gaming. And so I wasn't well, no, I guess I would have been. I would have played Rake when he visited Baruch. I would pull out that character sheet and played Rake at that point. So yeah, it probably was part of the game. I don't specifically remember it, but at the fete, I had multiple character sheets in front of me. I had Krupp, I had Ralik, I had Rake. They were all sitting right in front of me because I was bouncing, among all of them. Probably Fiddler as well,
And
and Quick Ben. Actually, now I think about it, and Kalam. So yeah, I had a lot of sheets, a lot of character sheets in front of me.
um, but so in the film, the original sort of film script, did it end with Raced coming to attack the city, or was there a
Mhm.
completely different end to it?
No, that's where it ends. And of course, it's got those moments, those Raiders of the Lost Ark moments where Crocus throws a rock or it's a brick, and that actually has as much effect as almost anything else that happens, in the story. So yeah, even there, we were constantly undermining sort of the uh, almost the seriousness of the situation, because that's Raiders of the Lost Ark. You watch that and you have fun watching it because you got to take it all with a grain of salt, and it's over the top in a very sort of delightful way. And that's what we were trying to emulate with the script version, at least, of Gardens of the Moon.
Hmm. Well, because I don't think we've ever discussed the script in any significant detail.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of context then added before those sections for the novelization then.
Massively so. Yes. Yes.
Um,
And I mean, it didn't, even in the first draft of Gardens of the Moon, I put in the prologue, and then it starts with the Siege of Pale. Um, no, yeah, I put in the prologue in the sense of on at Mock's Hold, that one little section with Haran. Um, I think I did, anyways, and then it went straight to the Siege of Pale. Um, so the subsequent rewrite, which I did before I submitted it, added in that whole opening section um, of Adjunct Lauren and company. So all that stuff.
hmm. So, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.